Welcome to the Filmcast review of Twisters. I'm going to read the plot summary from the internet. Haunted by a devastating encounter with a tornado, Kate Cooper gets lured back to the open plains by her friend Javi to test a groundbreaking new tracking system. She soon crosses paths with Tyler Owens, a charming but reckless social media superstar who thrives on posting his storm-chasing adventures. I'm David Chen here with Devindra Hardwar and Jeff Kanata. Devindra Hardwar, let's get into it. We talked about Twister on a recent episode of the Filmcast After Dark, a movie that we all enjoyed in retrospect.
Sure.
A lot of fun. A lot of curiosity by us about how this movie would handle its relation to that movie. Is it going to acknowledge that movie at all? Like, what's going to happen with it? All that said, we will get into all of that. But overall, what did you think of Twisters?
I mean, listen, I think the original Twister is a fun movie, but an incredibly dumb movie. And in many ways, not a really good movie, actually, but it's just fun. We're coasting off the vibes and the star power. This is a fun movie and a fun ride. It's also a good movie. I think that's a pretty big upgrade. So I think this is a better movie than the original Twister. Maybe it doesn't have the level of star power because mid-90s Bill Paxton. You can't. That's just tough. And Helen Hunt, it's really hard to top that specific formula. But no, I had a lot of fun with this movie. First of all, I'm happy that this movie recognizes that other people of other races exist as main characters, or to just appear on a camera at all. It's always weird going back to mid-90s movies. Like I remember watching Scream at some point. I was like, man, this is not a really normal American town, I guess. But no, I think the actual setup is interesting. The actual stakes are cool. Glenn Powell's character, who's essentially a social media dude, he's a vlogger taking vlogs of tornadoes. I think that character is compelling, even though it's kind of reckless. And the central the sort of setup of the first movie where you had this ragtag group of engineers versus the corporate folks, it's almost reversed in this one because our main character starts with the corporate folks and we're kind of going from their perspective. I found that kind of intriguing too. I would have loved to see Helen Hunt, would have loved to see some more of a direct connection to the original film. There is some tech here that does kind of connect to that.
There's a white tank top.
There is a white tank top. There are the sensor balls, a new version of the sensor balls. But I would have liked if you're gonna do this, do it. Okay. And Helen Hunt's still around and being really cool. So yeah,
she was in Hacks this last season.
She was in Hacks and she was amazing in Hacks.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of disappointing. I also think we'll talk about how this movie is both very hot and very sexless. It's just kind of weird to we can't do it. You've probably seen stuff on social media. We'll talk about
let's
this
talk about
later
spoilers.
on.
Yeah, but Jeff Kanata,
that is weird.
Jeff Kanata, your overall thoughts on Twisters?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my overall thoughts on Twisters is best summed up in the form of a limerick.
Let's hear it.
Not a remake, but more like a twin. It's 96 all over again. A few new surprises and storms of all sizes. It's fun. Give it a spin.
Nicely done, Jeff.
That's your Gene Shalit, basically.
I think Devindra summed it up perfectly with the fact that this is an upgrade. It's an upgrade. It's one of the few examples of this where the sequel is better than the original, in my opinion. Because I totally agree 100% that first movie, especially now with fondness for that time period, I look back and I go, fun. Goofy fun times, but not a very good movie. This one, I think, is exactly what Devindra described. It's an upgrade. It's actually pretty well made, pretty fun, has some interesting twists and turns. I mean, the first 10 minutes of this movie, 15 minutes of this movie, I was like, Glenn Powell was in this.
Yeah.
Maybe I got that wrong because clearly Anthony Ramos is the lead. But
he does feel like a good lead in this movie.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
I think structurally it's having some fun. And it's having some fun. I also agree with Devindra that it's a bummer that this doesn't have, for my little nostalgia hits and 90s fondness, I am also bummed it doesn't have more direct references, connections to the first movie. But it is in dialogue with that movie. in a large sense, right? Because of what Devindra was referencing with regard to, doing it for the science or doing it for the, for the money or whatever. Like that notion that is very prominent in the first movie is flipped on its head here in a I think a very clever way. And I think this movie does some smart things with that. It's not the best movie I've ever seen. I think this is a perfectly fun summer blockbuster that's not going to insult your intelligence. Glenn Powell is charming. All the leads in this movie are charming. There's some really fun things that we'll hit on in spoilers that I think are just neat kind of fantasy ideas. Like this movie, I think is more fantastical than the first, even though the first isn't exactly grounded in hard science either. But this one is even more, we're doing some goofy, fun stuff with tornadoes.
Yeah, we're doing literal climate, manipulation with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know, there's something fun about that. I am disappointed that this movie doesn't have the spine to actually talk about why we would be having more tornadoes now than we did 30 years ago.
Why is this?
The movie completely skirts that issue entirely, and it's not. I think that's.
I think you said during our After Dark, it's got to address it. It's got to address it.
You'd think, right?
All you have to say is there are more tornadoes now. I don't know why.
There's just more. Who knows why? I thought we solved it in the 90s, but turns out no. But yeah, I had fun with this. And I would recommend it to people looking for a goofy, fun time. I don't think it's going to end up on my top 10 of the year, anything like that. But I had fun with it. I was smiling. It doesn't overstay its welcome. I thought it was well directed too. Kinetic fun. I thought the effects work is spectacular. None of it feels very effectsy. None of it feels like we're watching a superhero manifest tornadoes. There's kind of a dirtiness and a messiness to the tornadoes that don't look CG. It looks kind of it looks very natural, which I think showed some restraint on the part of the filmmakers, because they could have gone very supernatural and very over the top with the effects. And I thought it looked pretty, I thought it was effective. So anyway, positive things to say about Twisters.
Yeah, we've come so far, by the way. Like the original Twister started out as an idea, right? Like wasn't the story like Spielberg was just like, hey, have you seen what computers can do?
Yeah.
Like making a tornado look real? That's cool. Let's make a movie around that.
Yeah.
That's Twister. So now you can actually make it look interesting and realistic. That's cool.
All right, hear me out, folks. This movie is a downgrade in most ways from the original Twister, in my opinion. It's fine. I had a fun time with it. I'm not saying it's like terrible. Don't see it. It's fun. Glenn Powell is really irritating in this movie.
Wow,
as he is supposed to be. As he's supposed to be.
I don't know.
And
he's supposed to win you over though with his heart.
That smile. Yeah.
Yeah, whatevs. Daisy Edgar Jones, I just think is really charming and manages to do a lot with a woefully underwritten character.
She is.
I
great.
think
she is great.
The real life practical effects are way. Here's what I would say: like the original Twister had, when you're looking at it today, has very iffy CG, but some amazing practical effects. Like it looks like they actually drove through a house. It looks like they actually threw a tanker onto the street. Like all the stuff that looks practical, it looks like they actually did it. This movie's practical stuff is significantly worse than the first movie, in my opinion, and the CG is only slightly better, in my opinion. So it kind of nets out to a worse place. That's just my own perspective, though. But I think that, like, when I think of the two movies together, the thing that ultimately makes this one not as good of an experience is like I just don't think the characters are as compelling in this movie, and the arc that the characters go on. And yeah, like it's not the most elaborate journey that Bill Paxton's character goes on. It's not the most elaborate journey that Bill Paxton's fiance goes on in the first one, but it's a journey. And it is more of a memorable journey than the journeys that these characters go on, in my opinion.
Wow, I don't.
This feels more
I
realistic.
I gotta challenge you on that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not because I think the ones in this movie are great. I just think they're both bad.
Okay. I mean, that's
I don't
fair.
think
That's fair.
I think it's so easy to pick apart the Bill Paxton. Like, we're supposed to literally believe that this guy walked out naked and tossed his drink into the tornado, and we have this like clunky scene where we're introduced to that information around the dinner.
I think
all of
there
that
is
stuff is bad.
There is a scene, like the whole Twister 1, right, is Bill Paxton's character. He used to be this tornado chaser. He's trying to settle down, become a meteorologist, work a normal life, right? And then the movie is about him and Helen Hunt emotionally abusing his fiance and then driving her away. Like that's the movie. And then there's that scene we talked about in the after arc where she kind of like lets him go. She's like, hey, she's like, I'm going. And he's like, okay, it's good for you to be at the hotel. And she's like, I'm not going to be at the hotel. And it's like, oh, that's
crazy.
Before
that, the movie was pretty psychotic towards that character. So like, that's where it's like, I'm going to abuse you as much as possible.
Absolutely. And it's
none of that.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree that she gets the shaft. But say what you will about the tenets of shafting his ex. At least it's an ethos. At least it's like, oh wow, the movie made a choice. It made a choice. And this movie, I feel like, doesn't make choices.
This movie could have been, and maybe started its life as a prequel to the first movie. Because it's like Glenn Powell is the way Bill Paxton is described having once been in Twister. And Helen Hunt and I'm sorry, what's her name? They're basically the same person.
Right. Yeah.
It very much is like, oh, these people grew up to be married and then had a falling out.
I will say I don't feel like they're the same person at all, because Helen Hunt's character had more, because it's Helen Hunt, she has more personality, right? Whereas Daisy Edgar Jones's character is like, I'm an office worker. I'm going to be like it's very like buttoned down, and she doesn't really get a chance to be expressive in the way that Helen Hunt does. So it's a little different.
I've made my case for why I think the original Twister is marginally better.
I understand why you like it more.
But they're both fun. They're both fun. It's just like, I just think this movie specifically falls down when it comes to the character work. We can talk about why in the spoilers.
I understand why you like it more, Dave, but I also remember as a kid watching it being like, oh, this is what adult relationships are like. This is what happens, right? Whereas this movie is more like, well, no, you've got trauma. You've got a lot of things building up, and maybe it's not as fun, but to me it feels more grounded, I guess.
I think they're both dumb, and this is slightly less dumb.
I disagree, and let's talk about why. So let's get to spoilers. Let's get to spoilers for Twisters starting right now. So much to say. I have so much to say in spoilers. This movie begins right with structurally, Twister and Twisters are extremely similar. They both begin with a scene of horrifying tornado-related trauma, followed by, hey, cut to some amount of time later, and then a female character in a white tank top shows up in a Twister environment and tries to deploy this scientific experiment in order to make the Twister world better. That's kind of like. Meanwhile, they're competing with some other group of people that have different goals, right? Like, and the Twisters also increase in size and danger as time goes on. And let's throw in one that happens at night in the middle just for fun. That's literally the structure of both movies, right? But I will say, I did like the opening of this one. The thing that really got me was you're introduced to these characters, right? Instead of just killing one guy, the original Twister, you're introduced to all these friends and characters.
And they seem likable.
And they seem likable. It's like, oh, maybe we're going to hang out with these characters as time goes on. Like, probably not Daisy Edgar Jones's character's boyfriend, because we never see him in the trailers at all. So, like, I think he's a goner. But when the Indian dude, Ravine, is like running away, and the tornado just whoop, and he's dead. It's like, holy shit! Like, oh wow, this movie is for real, man.
Relentless.
There is a high body count in this movie.
Yes.
And I was impressed by that, right? So, but yeah, the movie opens with this kind of like tornado trauma, and I think that this tornado trauma scene is good and also theoretically more interesting.
Yeah,
because it's her, the character, that's responsible for it, right? Like, she's the one that literally drove them into this mess.
I also think the thing that you see in movies frequently of the wacky offbeat group of friends who are having such a great time and ribbing each other, that's a hard thing to pull off.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this movie pulls it off pretty well.
Multiple
Pulls it off
times.
pretty well for like 7 minutes.
Well,
before
no,
all
that
these people
but
die.
also
No,
I
I know
the
it needs.
crew.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
later
I know.
crew is good.
But that's part of the difficulty level is expressing their relationships to each other in a compressed time period and not making it feel forced.
Yeah.
Because so many movies, it feels so manufactured and forced of like, okay, get back in here, you crazy. It's all that like, like E3 forced, where they do the demos of people playing online games together. It's like, Janet, I got your 6. It's like all that like feels so false.
Right. Yeah.
Movies do that frequently, and I thought the opening scene of this movie actually didn't feel galling in the same way that it can often feel.
And then they did it again too, like the later friends, like the Sasha Lane is in that, Katie O'Brien, like a good group of fun folks. I enjoyed watching them.
I share your being bummed at them not acknowledging the original film more, because so she has this machine called Dorothy 5.
Mm-hmm.
There's 4 Dorothys in the original movie, right?
Yeah.
And
took 30 years to make another Dorothy.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, like what's the timeline, right? But
there's a scene where she's like, "Mom," and I was like, "Oh, it's Helen Hunt! It's gonna be Helen Hunt!" And it wasn't, and I was so mad.
So Lee Isaac Chung has actually,
who I love, but
Lee Isaac Chung has actually given an interview explaining why Helen Hunt wasn't the mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she says, "I tried to hint it in the beginning because I knew that it might come up." This is an interview with a rep.
Mm-hmm.
You see it in the phone screen. That was very intentional, that when she's getting a call, it's clearly not Helen Hunt. But I think some people just end up expecting it will be her. I just felt like this is not what I want to see Joe Harding doing years from now. Right after seeing that first film, I imagined, what is Joe Harding up to right now? She's out there chasing storms, not at some farm complaining that her daughter is not calling her.
Yeah.
And so that's the basis of why,
that's
it's got
legit.
to be someone else.
That's legit.
My reaction to that is maybe you don't need a character whose whole life is complaining that her daughter's not calling her.
But also that ignores the process of having kids and getting older.
Yes.
Guess
sometimes
what?
you want to stop chasing tornadoes.
Storms, dude.
Sometimes you do. Also, we don't know who her father is. So is the tornado feeling, that superpower where you can tell where tornado is going? Is that genetic?
It's
genetic.
Yeah.
Or
is the tornado her father?
Also, in the first movie, Joe and her merry band of storm chasers, this is from the rap again, deployed Dorothy 1 through 4. Kate has Dorothy 5, which we as moviegoers have never seen before. How the hell did she get it if Joe Harding wasn't her mother? Lee Isaac Chung didn't take the bait. He says, "I have wondered this, and I have wondered what that story is. I'm sure she studied at Muskogee State. I'm sure there were scientists from the first Twister who were involved, passing the torch." Then Lee Isaac Chung says, "I don't know. I leave it to you." End quote.
Yeah,
I'm just going to say, I think
put in a reference, an Easter egg. I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
why.
I think it makes absolutely no goddamn sense at all, like how it plays out in the movie. Like, and I'm not saying like, oh, we need to have a Helen Hunt cameo in the credits. Just freaking acknowledge. Just freaking acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Like just say like, oh, what is it? Like literally put like 2 lines in the movie acknowledging the first film's existence. But I think that would be, gauche, because this movie basically copies the first film. Okay. The other thing about this movie, first of all, interesting cast in the movie. The new Superman is in this movie. He's kind of the evil corporate guy. I think the plot of the movie, by the way, makes absolutely no sense. The idea is that Javi's team is financed by this shady real estate developer, and the real estate developer. His plan is, we're going to go in after these people's homes are destroyed. We're going to swoop in and buy their homes for much cheaper and then like develop them. And by the way, that's going to generate enough money to buy military grade hardware.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, you know what though? At least it's a plan, Dave. Like the original Twister is just like their business, they're corporate.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Don't know. Corporate bad. Don't want to be one of those corporate slubs.
You got me there, Devindra. You got me there.
Yeah.
I also like though that,
but the plan is very bad. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
It's not a great plan.
There's really no villain in this movie. Even
Which
the
is
like,
kind of nice.
yes,
Yeah.
I agree. That's my point. Is that it is actually kind of nice in the same way that I complimented the first Twister for not turning the new fiance into a villain, which some movies would, just to make sure you're on the right side, with the movie. This movie doesn't turn Anthony Ramos into a villain. It doesn't turn it. He's just like, he's kind of just in over his head, and he's doing stuff that his heart's in the right place, but it's just kind of not right. It's a little more nuanced than movies like this tend to be. And I give it some credit for that. I think it's cool that because I kept going, we're going to have this turn where he is like actively trying to stop them. And, like, no, you have to come to war. But no, the movie's not.
That would be
playing.
a 90s movie. Like him going full evil would be 90s, like heel turn type stuff. I do feel bad for Anthony Ramos's character though, because clearly like he has enough charisma to be the lead of this movie. And at every opportunity where he's like, I really like you, Stacey Edgar Jones. I really kind of really, you want to hang out? The movie's like, no, not going to hang out. He's like, at one point I would do anything for you. Well, that almost means like love. No, never acknowledged.
That's the moment in the movie that I felt like this movie was this. Sometimes you watch a movie or a TV show and there's a moment that happens where you're like, oh, they have completely lost control of the storytelling. And that's when Anthony Ramos says, there was at one point in time, Kate, where I would have done anything for you.
Yes.
And it's like, what the fuck? What
he
was this built up at all?
I think it was being built up in that scene where he's like, come hang out. Would you like to come have a drink?
No, complete.
That's a whole scene. He invites her to come out for a drink and is sort of like, hey, I miss hanging out.
There is no chemistry between those characters in that scene.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the movie does not actually build that relationship, but I think that character could be another potential love interest.
It felt like a completely deleted subplot from the movie where like maybe they shot all these scenes with Anthony Ramos and the character kind of like some kind of love triangle thing, and they just deleted it. And then he has this very strange moment where he's like, oh yeah, there's a moment I would have done anything for you. It makes absolutely no sense in the context of the movie. It is shocking that moment comes in a movie directed by the guy who made Minari.
Yeah.
Who, which is like pretty well done character study, in my opinion.
Can I tell you my moment from this movie?
Go ahead, Jeff.
My moment from this movie is when Glenn Powell walks into her barn.
Yep.
Uninvited, wasn't told where it was, didn't have any reason to be there, but just walks in, and her mom's like, want to stay for dinner? I was like, to the man that's literally stalking her enough to find her childhood home and like just stroll into it.
Just
he didn't knock. He just walked in.
Jeff, she gets one look at him. Yep. And that smile's like, oh, this is husband material. Gotta lock this down.
Gotta lock this down.
Gotta lock this down.
You can get away with a lot if you look like Glenn Powell. That's
basically.
That's one of the big lessons of the film.
But I want to say, I feel really bad for Javi again at the end of the movie where she runs off to Glenn Powell, and he hunkers down. He drills down his car with Paul Scheer, telling him to move.
Paul Scheer, amazing that he's in this.
I want to get to that scene. There's a whole thing about that scene we got to talk about. But before we get to that, I just need to say that this movie has an extremely bizarre concept of what helping means. Like the idea is that Kate is like they're torn between we can either chase the storm or we can help people. And by the way, their version of helping is literally wandering into the storm path and screaming instructions at random people. That is what helping is, which by the way, I actually think is worse than like they're making it worse. And also you're helping them by literally doing the science research. Like let's get the priorities in order. You can say, I hate to be too utilitarian about it, but you're not doing that much by screaming instructions at people. You are doing a lot by potentially preventing all future tornadoes.
How many disaster response? How many disasters have you responded to, Dave, in terms of helping people?
The same number as these people.
The same number,
which I think going there zero, and thus I have zero expertise, and thus I don't want to get in there and make things worse. So like these people are just literally wondering, hey, get everyone into the theater. Get everyone into the theater. Oh my gosh, I've made a huge tiny mistake. The theater is closed.
Where else are they going to go?
Like,
you want them on the street?
It's like they literally make things worse at every turn, and I'm just like, why are you even doing it?
It's better than that, Dave. It's better than that because they're like, this theater has a basement, right?
Yep. Nope.
What theater has a basement? In what universe have you ever been inside a movie theater that has a basement? That is not a thing.
So this movie is very stupid. Like that part was so stupid. I was just like,
the idea that you would ignore the stupidity in the first Twister.
Yeah, they're running away from. They're being chased by tornadoes. And they're running away on foot, Dave. If you can excuse that,
this movie also has
these
similar.
People coming and trying to help.
This movie has also similar stuff to that. Notice I didn't complain about any of that stuff.
It does not as much, not nearly as much. Like when they run away, they're like, "Oh, immediately we need to find shelter." They're not running away in the open.
They literally run away from a tornado in the first scene of this movie. So
they do, but they run to shelter. It's not just like running through open fields. The first movie has a lot.
Bill Paxton, drops sand from his hand.
Yep.
To decide where the storm is going to go.
And they do the dandelion thing in this movie. Notice I didn't complain about any of that because, like, you know, basically where the movies are even in stupidity, I don't have any issue, right? Where this movie gets much dumber is where I have the problem.
I have no problem with them trying to like go and help people. They had 5 seconds to be like, oh, this crowd of people, some of which are kind of dumb and are be like, I'm going to be in my car. I'm safe in my car. No, you got to be in a structure. You got to be in something that you can like hold on to. They tried, and people are very stupid.
I did love the visual flourish of the tornado just ripping out where the screen was.
Yeah.
I mean, that's cinema.
The first movie had fun with that too, like at the drive-in.
Yeah,
it's
with the drive-in.
The drive-in. Yeah, with watching The Shining.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, thank you for letting me rant about that. Let's get to the final scene. This is very notorious, right? So the final scene of the movie, Glenn Powell shows up at the airport. He drills in the car into the Paul Shear's recent film.
Can we just talk about the drilling of the car for a second?
Yes.
Because that is awesome.
It's awesome.
I suspect it wouldn't do
good
shit.
Technology.
But it's awesome. That and the shooting fireworks into an active tornado, pretty rad.
Just for the clicks, just for the views.
Just like the idea of that for the movie is pretty great.
And we should say this movie makes YouTubers out into the good guys. Like if you're a YouTuber, you are the hero.
Do the irresponsible thing.
Yeah.
Drive into a tornado.
Just as long as you sell your merch to the right people.
The logical conclusion of YouTube culture, which is to say doing increasingly extreme and riskier things, is rewarded in this film. And
Mr. Beast is going to watch this movie and be like, okay, challenge accepted.
Here we go.
This is an extremely pro YouTuber movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he shows up at the airport. Recent guest and friend of the show, Paul Scheer, shows up. It was a delight to see him. I have to say that.
I agree. I forgot he was in it, and then he showed up, and I was like, oh, yes, here it is.
Well, because I actually invited him on to be on this review. And he said, I'm in that movie. So he couldn't do it.
Yes. Well, and then we talked about it. I think it was maybe off mic. We talked about it like, hey, man, good luck with Twisters. He's like, oh, I'm barely in that movie.
I'm in it for like a scene. But he's actually quite memorable.
He's so great in it. Yeah.
You want to be that character, like the one character that gets to shout at the lead. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, they drive, I think it's Glenn Powell and Anthony Ramos's characters drive Daisy Edgar Jones to the airport, and then Glenn Powell gets to run through the airport. And Devindra, I think the point you were making is Anthony Ramos just gets to say "attaboy."
I think he's more like, "Oh, I'm dying inside. This is it. I will never get my love now." Yeah.
Okay.
Poor Anthony Ramos.
There is a lot of controversy on the internet right now because you expect that after this running through the airport scene that Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones are going to make out passionately. And
what are we even doing here?
And in fact, there has been leaked footage from the set where it shows them actually making out. So they actually shot it. Did not.
No, that was Daisy Edgar Jones just saying, let's practice.
Yeah, just
practice
just to see it. Maybe
it'll work. Maybe it won't. I don't know.
But they actually shot the scene of them making out and did not include it in the film. I'm reading here from a Variety piece. Twisters cut a kiss between Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones due to Steven Spielberg's advice. According to Powell,
Damn you, Steven Spielberg.
it's a good Spielberg note. Edgar Jones told Collider, she says, quote, I think it's a Spielberg note, wasn't it? I think it stops the film feeling too cliched, actually. I think there's something really wonderful about it feeling like there's a continuation. This is
nobody kissed the shark at the end of Jaws, right? So.
Nobody kissed E.T.
You could have used a kiss.
This isn't the end of their story. They're united by their shared passion for something. Powell also said, I also think that this movie is not about them finding love. It's returning Kate to the thing that she loves, which is storm chasing. So that's what you have at the end of the movie. They share this thing. Her passion is reinvigorated and her sense of home is reinvigorated. Powell concluded, I feel like a kiss would be sort of unrepresentative of the goal at the end of the movie. And it's a good Spielberg note. It's why that kid is still in this game. It's amazing, end quote. Now,
Okay.
I'm just going to put this out there.
I get it.
I'm going to put this out there because DGAF.
Dave knows more than Steven Spielberg.
No, I was actually going to say the opposite.
Yeah. Oh.
I agree with Spielberg's decision. I actually like the fact that they don't kiss. If only for the reason that it makes this a slightly less brazen remake of the first film, which ends with a passionate 30-minute long kiss as a helicopter shot flies out from this field. I think it's actually nice that they don't kiss. You know, we get lots of kissing, and it keeps it from being an extremely cliched romance
I would argue
story.
maybe you don't wait till the very finale to do it because they were two hot people just hanging out for a while, going on adventures. Like many opportunities.
I get that movies are like very sexless nowadays,
Yeah.
and I actually don't like that they're sexless. I think movies should show the totality of human experience, and so I'm not I'm not saying like, hey, less kissing and sex scenes in movies or anything like that. But like in this case, and in particular because these characters are so underdeveloped, I think not having a kiss is a good thing. One other thing, by the way, about Daisy Edgar Jones' character, I don't think this movie does enough to have her grapple with the fact that she was responsible for all of her friends' deaths.
Oh yeah, that's also a thing. Her own grief has to be.
She has one scene where she kind of cries a little bit, and that's it. And I just feel like, wow, a lot of interesting dramatic material there that wasn't mined. And I think it just should have gone a little bit harder at that. So anyway, any other thoughts on Twisters or the ending?
Fun movie. Better than the original.
I think it's better than the original too.
Yep.
I thought the set pieces were pretty fun.
I guess I just feel like at the end of the original, when they kiss, it's like a big cathartic moment. And whether or not they kissed, like I felt so little for these characters and their relationship in this film that it didn't quite work for me as well. But anyway, I'm glad.
I do think it's a good payoff for the if you feel it, chase it. I thought that's a pretty cool payoff.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, it is really impressive that Lee Isaac Chung made a movie. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.